ahead and click record.
Okay. I call this meeting to order. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the June 27th, 2022 meeting of the Burlington Planning and Zoning Commission. My name is Richard Parker. I'm the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission. Due to renovations at the City Hall chambers, this meeting will be held on the Zoom platform. There is no in-person meeting tonight. If anyone has any technical difficulties, please contact Conrad. He's there on your screen, and his phone number is 336-214-4515. Now, since we're on a Zoom meeting, if you wish to speak on any matter that comes before the board, please use the raise hand feature on the Zoom platform, or you can press *9 if you're on a telephone. The host will recognize you if you want to speak. Now, we ask everyone tonight to please limit their comments to 3 minutes. You must give your name and address when you are recognized to speak. The commission is appointed by elected officials and has 5 regular members, 2 extraterritorial members, and 3 alternates. 4 members constitute a quorum. If we have a quorum, then our alternate members are welcome to stay and listen. However, they're not required to stay for the meeting. Now, this is a public meeting, and you will be given a chance to speak. And so now I'm going to call the roll. Can everyone on the commission hear me? Everybody can hear me? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to call the roll. John Black.
Here.
Ryan Kirk.
Here.
James Kirkpatrick.
Present, sir.
Lee Roan.
Here.
Joan Nelson.
Here.
Ethan Rayner.
Present.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and myself makes 7. So there's 7 of us here tonight. Our staff, Conrad Omedo.
Here.
And Jamie Lawson.
Here.
Okay. So during the presentations, we ask everyone to mute their microphones and raise their hands if they wish to speak. Our first item of business is the approval of minutes from May the 23rd, 2022.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Kirk seconds. So all in favor of approving the minutes, raise your hand. Aye. Any opposed? So to reiterate, for the items tonight, the public will be given 3 minutes to express their opinions of the matter being presented. And we ask the audience please not to repeat comments. And we want to hear from everybody if they have a comment about the matter at hand, but we don't need everybody to say, oh, I don't like it, I don't like it, I don't like it. You know, if someone makes the point that they don't like it for some reason, then we've heard the reason. Let's move on to another reason if there is one. So we don't want a lot of repeating tonight. So our first matter of rezoning is rezoning case 22-0007, Mr. Thomas Purdue. And the applicant is here to present a request to rezone some land to HDR. Now, are there any conflicts with this item before we get started? Anybody have any conflicts with this first item? Anyone? I take that as a no. All right, Mr. Purdue, please make your case.
Well, pretty straightforward. We want to rezone this to allow for some townhomes at the corner parcel here. We're going to leave the existing structure that's there, a single family home, leave that there and take the remaining space to develop some townhomes, some smaller units that are a little bit more affordable these days.
Okay. Is that all you have to say?
I mean, water and sewer is going to be provided by the city of Burlington. So we'll provide the, minimum parking requirements. We'll meet those. We'll meet the requirements that will be placed on the site for driveways, setbacks, landscaping if needed. That's pretty much it.
Okay. So I'd like to ask the commissioners now if they have any comments or questions about
I
this
do.
item.
I do.
Go ahead, Mr. Kirkpatrick.
How many units are you looking to put there? And do you have an artist rendition of what they're going to look like by any chance?
We're gonna no more than 5. And we have a concept plan that we put together that we have, we've shared with Conrad. I don't know if Conrad, if you're able to pull that up. I'm on my phone right now, so I apologize.
Sure.
I'm not able to.
Just Chair Parker and member, Commissioner Kirkpatrick. So this is a limited use rezoning. So we don't have a plan to be associated with this request. It is a request for high density residential, for single family detached and single family attached. So the site plan, the concept plan will come forth after the review of this rezoning request.
I didn't know if one was available or not. That's all.
Okay. Just in order to be consistent with one, the applicants provided us with some concept plans, but just for consistency with the limited use rezonings request, for us to just focus on the rezoning request as presented, which
Okay.
is just, yeah, thank you. Mhm.
A couple of questions. First, you mentioned there is a house on the northwest corner of this lot. Is this lot going to be divided into multiple parcels for the townhomes?
No, it'll be a one parcel that will have 5 units on it. That will be under a common property manager.
Is the current structure being included as one of those 5?
No, that will be subdivided and remain separate.
Okay. Second question, have you engaged any of the immediate neighbors of single family homes in particular? And if they had any feedback on this?
We have not.
Okay.
You have
All right,
not
those are my
reached
two
out, or
questions.
you've not had, you have not reached out, or you have not received any feedback.
We have not reached out.
Okay.
I have a question. The single family house, I don't quite understand this. Is it occupied or it's empty and you are going to turn this into multifamily on the same lot?
The owner, I believe, of the site should be on this call. His name's Pedro Rodriguez. He can speak to if the single family home is occupied or not at this time, but the plan is to keep it and have it occupied. And it will be its own separate parcel.
Hey, Thomas, I don't see anyone. I see a couple of phone numbers in here.
He might have called in.
Is he calling in? Okay. There's a 430 number. I'm gonna just see if they can, I'm gonna ask them to speak.
Pedro's number is
You can just,
730.
is a 730 number or the 430 number?
919-730.
Okay, I don't see that phone number on the call. Okay.
Is he the principal in Golden Investments and Properties?
If he's not attending, then he's not here. And I
Okay.
apologize for not answer that question.
I'll repeat the question. Is Mr. Rodriguez a principal in Golden Investments?
He is.
Thank you.
So I've got a question about this single family home. Will there be enough land for the single, what is the zoning there right now? I mean, how much land would they need, Conrad, to maintain that single family home on a separate lot?
So the requested use here is going to put this in a high density residential zoning designation, and that district has a minimum lot size for a single family detached of 6,000 square foot.
Okay. High density residential. Okay, so there'd be enough room for the house and 5 more units.
Based
So-
on based on our initial discussions with the applicant, that seems like it would be that law could potentially fit up to that number of units.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I do have one more question. So I've raised concerns in the past about creating donut isolated zoning. And so now I'm looking at the 2 parcels immediately to the south that are still listed general business. I didn't get a chance to drive down this road. One of them has a structure on it. It looks like from the aerial picture immediately to the south on the Whitsett Street. Is that a house or is that a business?
It's a residential structure.
So, but it's listed as general business zoning, so that's a non-conforming use, Conrad, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. So general business no longer allows single family detached homes. So that would be a non-conforming single family residence there.
Okay, and then the other general business one, which faces onto Stoke Street, that looks like a vacant parcel that's adjoining to the south.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this looks vacant.
Okay, so those would have to be addressed separately. So I mean, my concern would be to isolate the businesses by surrounding them with residences, but that's not the case here. So I just wanted to confirm that observation. All right, thanks.
If you look at the lots on Stoke Street, 4 of the ones on Stoke Street, the corner one and the 3 adjacent to the west, I believe it's the west of the vacant lot, are all zoned high density residential. Thanks, Conrad.
Mhm.
Any more questions for the applicant? Now, Conrad, are you trying to find if anyone else
Oh,
has,
yeah.
would like to speak tonight? Anybody in the public? Have you figured out anybody in the public that would like to raise their hand or speak or anything?
Sure, and Chair Parker and members of the commission, staff hasn't received any written comments regarding this request up into the meeting. And if anyone in the audience would like to speak on this item, please do so by indicating with using the raise hand feature or pushing *9 on your phone. It doesn't look like I'm getting anyone. Let me give it like another 10 seconds or a couple more seconds. Doesn't look like anyone is raising their hands, Chair Parker,
Okay.
to speak on this item.
All right, I'll turn to you then again. What is your recommendation, Jamie and Conrad?
Good evening. So staff is recommending the rezoning request as it is consistent with the land use plan, which calls for the area to be traditional residential. And so it's provided in your land use plan, consistency statement sheet, option 1. And the rezoning then also brings that existing home into conformity where, as mentioned, the existing general business does not allow for single family detached homes.
your recommendation then is for approval.
That's right, sir.
Okay. Lastly, any commissioners have any final comments regarding this matter? Is there a motion?
Chair Parker, I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of the request to rezone property zone general business to be rezoned to high density residential limited use HDR-LU. The property is located at the southwest corner of Cleveland Avenue and Winston Street, addressed as 310 Cleveland and consisting of Alamance County tax identification number 133839. The motion is based upon the consistency of the proposed rezoning with the comprehensive plan in that the future land use map in section 4 land use of the comprehensive plan calls for this area to have traditional residential uses. The request is compatible with the adjacent residential uses. The action is reasonable and in the public interest in that the comprehensive plan calls for residential uses in the area. The request is compatible with existing zoning and land uses in the area.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, Jamie, we have a motion and a second. Conrad, could you call for a vote?
Chair Parker,
Approve.
Vice Chair Black,
Approve.
Commissioner Kirk,
Approve.
Commissioner Kirkpatrick,
Approve.
Commissioner Roan,
Approve.
Commissioner Zach Nelson,
Approve.
Commissioner Rayner,
Approve.
all votes are accounted for and no, all are in approval.
Thank you, Conrad. Item number 4. This is rezoning matter 22-0004. Mr. Matt Wall, applicant, to present an application to rezone property zoned medium density residential as MDR to be light industrial limited use LILU. The property is located on the south side of the intersection of Danbrook Road and Bonner Bridge Parkway, addressed as 0 Danbrook Road and consisting of Alamance County tax identification number 106952. Now, before we move on with this item, are there any conflicts of interest with this item? Anybody have any reason to have a conflict?
Chair Parker, I just wanted to disclose that I live within the vicinity of, but not the notification area of the rezoning case. And I do not have any direct, substantial, or readily identifiable financial impact on this item. Therefore, I have no conflict of interest and I'm comfortable hearing this item.
Thank you. Does everybody approve of Mr. Rayner's explanation? I see some nodding heads. Okay, James. All right. Thank you, Mr. Rayner. Anybody else? Any conflicts from anybody else?
And Chair Parker, sorry to interrupt here, but there's a total of, people are asking how many folks are in the audience. There's a total of 58 persons in the audience.
Okay. Well, I'm glad they came. Thank you all for coming.
And then Conrad, there's another question about were written emailed comments provided to board members.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Kirk. So staff has received all the emails that were sent to myself, which would be staff, have been, as well as Jamie, who afforded me the emails, have been provided to you. I compiled several of them at noon. That was a cutoff date. That was just a cutoff time to give you all just one big email. And then I believe two emails came in after that time up until 5 o'clock, and those were forwarded to you as direct emails. So you've received all the emails that have been provided to staff up to 5 o'clock as of today.
Okay. Thanks for all your work on that, Conrad.
Well, thank you.
Appreciate it. I got through all of them. I hope everyone got to read most of them and get the feeling out there.
Let me see.
Is our applicant here?
Yeah, I forgot about, let me go ahead and bring Mr. Wall on. I'm gonna scroll through him. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and bring him into as a panelist here.
And there's also, Chair Parker, there's also someone with their hand raised. It's Amanda Palmer. I'm not sure if she is associated with the application or not, so you may want to just see if she's looking to be admitted as well.
Now let's start with Mr. Wall. Mr. Wall, do you know the person that has their hand raised? Are they,
I don't think so, Chair Parker.
okay. Well, let's start with Mr. Wall and get the applicant's presentation, please. Go ahead, Mr. Wall. Welcome to P and Z.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that, Chair Parker. It's nice to be promoted to a panelist. And we've got a lot of people here, and I'm sure they're anxious to speak. I'll try to be brief. But it is, I do thank you for allowing me the opportunity to present this application on behalf of the owner, and thank the board and the staff especially for their assistance in their thorough report recommending approval. If there seems to be amongst the board members a sense of deja vu, you are correct. 4 months ago, the end of February, we had a similar application, which I would say, remind the board, was unanimously approved 5-0 on that night. That was, though, a conventional rezoning request, not a limited use rezoning as this one is. With the conventional, there were close to 100 possible uses that could be allowed under the rezoning request. We have limited that, as Conrad says, this is a limited use rezoning request, and now approximately 28 have been identified by the applicant and included as possible uses. I think in your packet regarding this particular rezoning application, it's included in the ordinance. I think there are 32 different uses. 4 of those were later eliminated, numbers 2, 3, and 4, and number 21. So just to make clear that we're and the 28 that we do still include of those 32, those were the items that were sent to the or included with the letter about the neighborhood information meeting. The reason as staff report, I noticed, mentioned the previous city council meeting, and as a result of that city council meeting, we did rework the application to go back and limit the number of uses that would be allowed in this rezoning request. And so now we're back at planning and zoning. I'm not sure, and Conrad, you'd have to tell me if Chad Huffine, our engineer, is present and listening, and or Jeff Smith, real estate agent, are here, but I will certainly be happy for them to make any comments, Mr. Chairman, because they've been involved in this process, as have I. Briefly, as staff says in the report, the future land use plan calls for this tract and the area surrounding to be business, park, or light industrial. Thus, our request is consistent with the future land use plan and complements existing uses in the surrounding area. You may recall from the previous meeting back in February that we did report on a neighborhood information meeting that was very sparsely attended. And I think, frankly, the materials that are in your packet reflect that meeting and not our most recent one. But that's my fault, because the neighborhood information meeting we conducted just happened last Thursday, and I haven't had a chance to send a report in to Conrad on that. But I think some of the, I've had a chance to look at some of those letters that Conrad received, city received on this proposal, and I received those today. And I think you're going to find that those probably are letters. A lot of those folks were at that meeting. We had about 15 folks, I think, who came to the meeting last Thursday. We sent out letters to approximately 50 folks, far exceeding the scope that the city rules suggest and require, because we wanted to get as much input as we could, including Lake McIntosh folks, which are frankly a good bit down the road from where this particular tract is located. I would also note, and the basic comments and concerns, objections were related to traffic, lighting, noise, signage, safety, and property values. I would note that your packets contain, as I mentioned before, a copy of the January letter and report. And of course, as I mentioned, I have not had a chance yet to prepare a report on our meeting from just late last week. But we will certainly do that in due course, regardless of the results of this meeting, before we take this to the city council. And while this is a public hearing, and I know you've got a lot of folks who want to speak, and I'm sure most of them want to speak against it, I would encourage the board, as best they can under these the meeting circumstances and the time allowed, to weigh the comments of those folks with the proximity of their property to the parcel that's being requested as and I think, as the staff has said in their report this time and a few months ago, that of course any future development of this property would of course require TRC and further staff review at the appropriate stage regarding the configuration of the project, entryways, lighting, signage, etc. We are asking the board to approve this rezoning request. Available. Any questions that the commissioners have?
Go ahead, Mr. Kirkpatrick.
Sir, the number one, have you come out and said what? I mean, I realize you've limited the use, and maybe we can't ask this, and maybe Conrad might want to chime in here. I don't know what the intention is with the property, which would go to my next question. Has there been, pardon me, Conrad?
Oh, no, go ahead, sir. Yeah, you're fine. I think I know where you're going.
Depending upon what you put there, have you done a traffic impact analysis?
No, we have not done a traffic impact analysis at this point.
Well, let me ask you this. How many of the 50, let's just say there's 50 people on this phone call, how many of them are going to list traffic as their top 3 issues with this proposed development?
You're asking me that question?
Yes, sir. How much was that a major issue?
Oh yeah, traffic was definitely a concern expressed by the folks who appeared at the neighborhood meeting. And I'm sure from the ones, again, I haven't read every line of every of the letters that y'all have, but I'm sure that was a concern expressed in many of those letters as well.
So if traffic is the number one issue, are you going to do a traffic impact analysis, or is the city going to ask you to do one?
Well, I think that the short answer is yes, but it's probably going to be only if the property is rezoned to look at what we're going to be able to do and what's going to be the best fit for this property. Now, as far as what can be put on there, I don't think there's any real secret. It was mentioned a few months ago what our primary goal for this property was. That's not the only possible use. There's these other uses too. But it is, I think, and Conrad would say, as he said before, that the consideration as far as the rezoning is not tied to one particular use, but to all those that have been listed as possible use.
Okay. Thank you.
And Chad, I would say if Chad is here and online, I would certainly ask him to chime in if he wants to add anything into the traffic. But
Mr. Wall, I don't see Chad on the call, and I do see Jeff Smith on the call, but I've tried to promote him as a panelist, but I'm not sure if he's getting that message.
yeah, I think
Maybe
Chad was, excuse me for interrupting, Conrad. I
go
think
ahead.
Chad was going to be at a similar meeting in Elon tonight,
Okay.
and might not
Okay.
be. He might either be late or might not be able to make it. So.
All right,
Sure.
before we hear from any in the public, do any other commissioners have a question for the applicant?
Got a question. I've got one, Richard.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead, Mr. Roan.
in one of the letters, it notes that there are approximately 2,000 homes in McIntosh on the Lake. Is that accurate?
I don't know who that's a question for, but I think that's a better question for the planning folks than for me. I don't.
I'm gonna pull up a map here that our assistant city manager Nolan Kirkman and our GIS team with Andrew Shore popped up. It's a little, I'm gonna be zooming in here, but you can, it kind of helps communicate the various degrees of, I guess, of development in the McIntosh and the Lake area. The green, this bright green color shows developed parcels. This lighter green shows parcels that are being developed, and the yellow shows undeveloped land. And what you can see here, I'm going to zoom in. I'll do a marquee zoom because it has some good information there. Is the development status of McIntosh and the Lake in this area is 1,614 total lots approved and proposed. So this gives you some of that data, that information. Now, we do have other, and on that note, I want to kind of supplement what, you know, someone was probably thinking about that 2,000 unit number. You do have some townhomes that are being reviewed currently by staff. We have not issued an approval. That's about 214 townhomes. And council approved a plan development rezoning request at their meeting, was it last Tuesday, for 252 homes. So this kind of, and you have some additional approved townhomes and units. So you do have a number that's kind of close to that overall number that is mentioned. You've got a, I don't know, I don't want to quote exactly 2,000, but you're looking at least 1,600 to 14 plus some additional units that might be that are scheduled for development, and from townhomes that are also scheduled for development as well. So I hope this map communicates some of the overall units that are looking to be added to or existing in this area.
All right, so currently there are 2 entrances. Well, actually, I'm seeing
There's, I don't see our transportation engineer, and I know that we can talk about transportation till the cows come home, but overall, I'm gonna be reiterating what Nolan Kirkman, our assistant city manager, has talked about. This is one of the entry egresses of the community, as well as out through this area right here. I forget the name of this street. This is is
Springwood
it Dairy?
Springwood Church.
Yeah, Ingle Dairy,
Church.
Springwood Church.
Ingle
Okay, so
Dairy.
right around there, Ingle Dairy, yeah. And then there has been some discussion. This recent development has given, I think it's 300,000. Don't quote me on that. $200,000 or $300,000 for infrastructure improvements for transportation connectivity. Not slated yet. That money's not earmarked for any particular project, but it's going to help address any transportation discussion. So 300,000. It looks like I got a number, and then this Greason Lane as well is possible. There's some considerations for extending Greason Lane to connect to Huffman Mill. That's kind of the extent of what I'm aware of as far as transportation connectivity. And I did get a revision to this number of units that it's actually kind of more than what I was thinking. It looks like it's close to 2,700 units total. I think that includes all these proposed and potential units, including the existing units as well. So that range is more than what I was telling. Thank you.
That
Thank you,
answers my
Jamie.
question.
Thank you,
That-
Mr. Ryan.
Yeah.
Mr. Kirk, do you have a question?
For the applicant, common question from all the letters we received and in the chat right now. If this is going to be a gas station, will there be diesel? Are there plans for diesel? Just trying to, what types of vehicles would be using this gas station?
As far as the type of fuel that might be sold at a gas station, excuse me, a convenience store with a gas station, I'm not sure about that, but as far as a guess, I would say yes, I would guess so.
Okay, thank you. And
But
then
I can't swear, I'm not gonna swear.
okay, understood. And then just one other preemptive question. To me, the big issue is transportation as we're hitting here. And it's the transportation for a whole district. And we're putting all the brunt of that onto one parcel here. Conrad, I know we don't have our transportation planner here, but is there a discussion in the cities to address the increasing stress of traffic in this increasingly developed area? Because that seems like it's bigger than any individual parcel's problem.
Yeah, Commissioner Kirk, you bring up a good point. We're looking at one parcel this evening, rezoning request. I understand there's a lot of moving parts in this map that I'm showing you. And to answer your question as best as I can, staff definitely is aware of traffic, transportation matters, and we have our transportation team and our assistant city manager, Nolan Kirkman. He's leading that effort. There has been some discussion. There was some improvements made to the Highland Elementary School that this developer across the street here put in. So there have been some improvements made in terms of the queues, and really I'm starting to get into an expertise that's not my expertise, but I am familiar with some of the discussion. But I think I'm comfortable to say that staff is working to resolve and has been working hand in hand with developers as they've come through to resolve the transportation concerns that are being brought up. And as discussed, the transportation impact analysis, if it triggers the thresholds that would be required of the development should they choose, because we need to consider that this is a limited use rezoning, and our unified development ordinance has that triggering of, I think it's 100 peak trips or 1,000 per day. That when the use comes back to staff, the transportation department would discuss that at a pre-application conference when this project has a site plan for consideration, and based on that use, staff would then determine if a transportation impact analysis would be required.
Mr. Kirkpatrick, do you have a question?
So I guess that's the explanation of why a traffic impact analysis has not been done yet to the developer or to the attorney for the developer.
Yes, that's the main reason, is because this will depend on once the site plan gets further down the road and further staff review, that will be something that will be determined by the nature of the development.
Okay. Seems like never mind. We'll hear from the public or keep moving.
Any other questions now from commissioners before we start hearing from the public? Ethan, Joan, John, anybody? All right, well, let's, John, do you have anything to say?
Mr. Chairman, I'm looking at the limited use. I'm going to just go right here and say, as far as I'm concerned, traffic, noise, all of that, really, I don't really care that much about it. Car wash or automobile detailing, convenience store with gasoline sales, I have a problem with due to the close area of that to the major watershed, the water source of Burlington. My biggest concern is with the quality of water and what might happen to it should something happen with a diesel, gas, whatever, a spill. The rest of it is kind of a moot point. I mean, it's McIntosh, it's going to be developed, it's 80-some% developed. There's no doubt in my mind that the rest of it will be developed at some point. People who bought out there should have understood that was going to happen. And that's just the way it is. But gasoline sales or say a car wash or something like that, which may affect the primary watershed for the city of Burlington, I'm going to vote against. Right now, I'll tell you, I'm just letting that be known. So traffic doesn't bother me, noise doesn't bother me. That's part of what's going to happen. But when we start talking about the quality of the water and what we sacrificed to get Lake McIntosh out there, I'm not going to vote for anything that would allow harm to come to our primary watershed.
Thank you, Mr. Black. Conrad, I don't think there's any other commissioners at this point who have a question. James, do you have something?
We had mentioned at our last meeting that we were going to kind of discuss this amongst ourselves first and foremost before we invited the public in. And is that something that we should try to do now? Because I heard Mr. Black loud and clear on the water quality, and that's not my issue. My issue is the traffic. And we have approved, and the city council has approved a lot of things out there. And to me, the traffic analysis needs to be done before the rezoning. Because that's my individual concern. So I'm different from John Black in that mine's traffic. So.
And Mr. Chairman, if I understand what Mr. Kirkpatrick is making reference to, our discussion at the last meeting was that the planning and zoning meeting is a public meeting, but not a public hearing. The public hearing is held in front of city council.
That's correct.
So, you know, whether we hear anybody, it's not up to us to hear. The public hearing goes to the city council. This is a public meeting. It's open for people to hear. If I'm understanding what Mr. Kirkpatrick is referencing.
That's correct. We had talked about beating this around amongst ourselves before we went and opened it up to public comment and whatnot, if I'm not mistaken.
And that was because it's a public meeting, but not
Correct.
a public hearing.
Correct.
Ms. Lawson, do you have any comments about that?
Well, yes, it is correct. This is a public meeting, not a public hearing. It has been the Planning and Zoning Commission's preference and sort of general practice to hear members of the public, to have public comments and input as part of the process to help inform the decisions that go towards your recommendation to city council. So while it is not a requirement, it has been your practice in the past.
And I would say that was probably due to the misunderstanding as to this being a public meeting or a public hearing. However, the public, if requested by the chair or a member, can answer a question. That's how we glean our information, but it's not from the open-end comments from 100 people.
Okay. So what does the commission feel like tonight? Do you want to take a couple questions or hear public comments?
Well, I thought we did discuss kind of kicking around what the commission's concerns were. John Black has voiced his. I voiced mine. If I didn't have one, I'd tell you why I was for it. Where are we landing right now? Do we have enough to see? Do we have enough information?
Well, I've looked at this and thought about it. And my concern is the same as yours, the traffic. I don't think a major service station off the interstate should be at the entrance of our largest subdivision. I think it needs to be on a main thoroughfare like most other gas stations, somewhere out facing University Drive or somewhere out in easy view of the interstate where cars and trucks can pull off, pull in and get back on the interstate. But this is just too deep in a residential subdivision for me. And I'm opposed to it. So that's where I stand, Mr. Kirkpatrick.
Thank you.
Mr. Kirk, do you have an opinion?
I want to hear public comments. I mean,
Okay.
very much welcome that.
Okay, Joan?
I'd like to hear the public comments, and I also agree with you, Chairman Parker, and also the water argument as well.
Okay, Mr.
So at this
Rose?
point, I'm opposed.
I look at a lot of things. I look, right now, I'm looking at the statistics of how many cars you're going to have at a gas station. A gas station with 12 pumps, in 24-hour period, you're serving, if it's open 24 hours, you're talking about 850 vehicles. That's based on each pump serving 3 vehicles in an hour, 20 minutes each over a 24-hour day. And assume you have 12 pumps. So that's a lot of cars. Most stations don't get that much business, but that's the potential if it's open for 24 hours. Now, a lot of that traffic is going to be in and out when residents aren't going to and from work, for example, or we're not having kids going in and out of school, buses, for example. So that number is just something I'm throwing out there. You put a light at Danbrook and Bonner Bridge, that's coordinated with the lights at Bonner Bridge and University Drive. That controls the flow somewhat. And if entrance and egress, entrance and exit to the gas station are looking like they're going to be on Bonner Bridge from either end of the station, that's adding to it. So based on use, yeah, we got a lot of homes out there. People out there knew they were going to be in a bottleneck when they bought the land or bought the house in that particular residential area. I agree with Mr. Black. I'm not sure what the topography is, where the water drains from that particular lot, but if it drains downhill into a creek that empties into Lake McIntosh, we got a problem.
Okay.
I'm on the fence on it right now.
Okay, all right. Ethan, do you have any opinion?
I'm sharing similar sentiments to my fellow members, and being a resident and also on well water in the area, obviously soil and water would be a concern for myself. Traffic at that area is already congested, and it's a difficult intersection to navigate coming from Danbrook to Bonner Bridge that way. So I'm interested to see what a traffic study would produce.
Okay. I think the planning department has sent out letters to the residents at the McIntosh, and I would be inclined to go ahead and let's hear some comments. We seem to be about half divided on this. And so I'd like to hear some comments. And since planning did send out letters to the people inviting them to this public meeting, Conrad, would you start letting a few of them in, and let's hear what the main conversation is.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Parker. At this point, I'd like you, if you're in the audience, to just use the raise hand feature or dial *9 if you are calling in. And I will let you in as a panelist. Upon doing so, just, feel free to turn your camera on. We will need you to state your name and your address clearly for the record, and unmute yourself upon coming in.
And
Chair
you've got 3
Parker.
minutes.
Yeah,
3
Chair
minutes.
Park. Thank you, sir. I'm gonna put a timer on, which I will be starting upon when you start to speak. I will go ahead and get that started for you. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm gonna start with Amanda Palmer. I will be bringing her in, and then I will go down the order here. Thank you. One second. This Miss Palmer. Will be putting. Hello, Miss Palmer. Give me 1 second while I get the timer started here.
Sure.
See. Oops. Not 30 minutes. I don't know if anyone want to speak.
Oh yeah, that would be great. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay. Go ahead and speak whenever you're ready. I'll start the timer and I'll share my screen. Thank you.
All right. So Amanda Palmer, I stay in McIntosh on the Lake. Address is 365 Sapphire Road. I am very not happy about this gas station coming up. I think that it will be a detriment to our community. As some of the other zoning members have already stated, this area is already bottlenecked. Yes, we understood that it's McIntosh and it was going to be further developed. However, I think putting a gas station at the entrance of our neighborhood where we have the primary exit to getting to the highway will be a detriment to us. I'm a full-time working parent who has a child at Highland Elementary, and that traffic in the morning, 7:30, it's, first of all, if you're going into Carline, you can barely get out because of all the traffic that's coming up the road. And if you're trying to come up the way where the dealership is, you can barely get past that stop sign because of all the traffic. So I'm a taxpaying citizen here. I'm a public service member with my occupation, and I disagree with the gas station 100%. And I think that if the chair members cared about our community, which I heard that some of you guys do, and I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate the disapprovals, you guys would agree with us on this. I don't think it's also safe to have a gas station with pumps like that next to a school with our little children there. And, I just disagree. So that's my piece on it.
Thank you, Ms. Palmer.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to, Ms. Palmer, I'm gonna go ahead and move you back to an attendee.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I will have Ryan Spedicini is next. And after Mr. Spedicini, I'll call him Mr. Oswald, Thomas Oswald. So Mr. Spedicini, if you can just state your name and address for the record prior to addressing the commission.
Don't forget to reset your clock.
Okay, here's reset it. I think he should be joining us here. Here he is.
Go ahead, Ron.
Thank you, city staff and commissioners. This is Ryan Spadaccini. I'm at 336 Lochmatty Drive in Burlington. I serve as the McIntosh on the Lake HOA board president, and obviously also a resident. I've been the board president for going on 3 years now. And there's a couple of things that I think there's some misinformation that's been stated, and I just wanted to correct. The community at large, meaning the management company or the clubhouse, because it does have a mailing address, did not receive a letter for this meeting that happened at our clubhouse in a way that the board could send notification out to the balance of the community to let them know that this was happening. Myself and Charlie Beasley, which I know some of you are familiar with, just kind of found out about this public meeting, I guess you could say, but it's kind of private in a way, just by happenstance 2 days prior. And then it was made public that there was this meeting at the clubhouse. Unfortunately, the vast majority of the board, including myself, was on vacation and could not attend. So It is very unfortunate that we did not get more notification, being that we're 1,400 plus homes currently and soon to be close to 1,600. It would have been great if we could be there. And then also, there was a comment about, us living here and knowing, what was coming down the pike with the development of the community. Absolutely. We did know that. However, the apartments that have recently been approved, whether right or wrong, were not, from my understanding, not originally planned as far as zoning goes. And that zoning was changed to accommodate those. So that has added extra traffic. And as many of you have stated, and I'm sure many of the residents will say, there's huge concerns of traffic. There is backup already that goes past the firehouse to the point where they had to put a sign that says, "Don't block the firehouse." This means that school traffic is only going to block the gas station entrance, and never mind even go past Danbrook, as more and more kids go there as we continue to put more apartments and more townhomes in the vicinity. And then it'll also conflict with the firehouse. And I will say that at the public meeting, and I know my time is winding down here, the developer and landowner, I was not there, but from my understanding, he did say that diesel is not out of question for this gas station, and that would service a large tractor trailer. So the community as a whole, we have really been talking about over the last few days, and we really have a lot of issues with this. And I don't think a gas station makes sense in this area, as some of you have pointed out, and I appreciate you disapproving it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron, for your comments. Appreciate it.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and move Ryan to an attendee, and now we'll be bringing on Mr. Oswald. If you can, Mr. Thomas Oswald, if you can state your name and address for the record before addressing the commission. And following Mr. Oswald, got Mr. Charles Beasley on deck. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Oswald.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
My name is Thomas Oswald. I live at 1960 West Buck Hill Road, approximately, not even 1 mile from this proposed project. And just ask that you consider what Attorney Wall said and weighing the comments based on proximity. We're about as close as it gets in terms of single family homes in the area. And, I know that we're not the only ones who are going to be affected. It's the people of McIntosh. They're asking to put a gas station at the entrance to McIntosh, and they're not being clear or honest, I think, or well, maybe not honest is the word, but forthcoming about whether or not they're going to have diesel there. We were at the neighborhood meeting. We asked them, they're like, "Oh, we don't know." They also put forward 28 other possibilities for this. And then when they were asked specifically, the owners of the project, they said it was going to be a gas station if they were allowed to do it. So this is all going to be at the bottleneck in the entrance. And just to make clear, this has nothing to do with serving the people of our community in the McIntosh area. I wonder where we've all been getting gas for the last, however many years. I wonder, we really need gas. No, there's another gas station 1.1 miles away from this. And right across the street from that, there's another gas station. So nobody needs this. This is to serve the people who are driving by on the highway, clogging up basically the only entrance to McIntosh, making a bottleneck. There's no demand for this. I know that's not really your function here to figure out what the demand is, but this does nothing for the people of McIntosh. There's plenty of places to get gas. It's ridiculous. This is just a cash grab. They're going to put up an ugly Shell station, and that's going to be the banner. Hey, welcome to McIntosh. Check out our awesome Shell station. Poisoning the water, poisoning our kids. They want to put this thing up. And, going off what Ryan just said, this whole buyer beware notion that the council wants to throw around. The zoning might be clear, and when we buy a property, we bought a house that says medium density residential, but it's not clear that the central planners and the benevolent rulers at our city council have decided upon this unified development ordinance that every single parcel has a purpose that's going to be transformed to in the future. So yeah, maybe this conforms to your plan, but your plan doesn't conform to the times that we live in. It was from 2019? Don't say that we knew what we were getting into when we moved here, unless you're sitting out there announcing what every parcel of land is intended to be. It's absolutely ridiculous. So you all should be voting against this. And I'm sure everybody else is going to say what I said or something even better than what I said, but this has no business being in this location. It's absurd.
Thank you, Thomas. We appreciate your comments.
All right, I'm gonna move Mr. Oswald as an attendee. And Mr. Beasley, I'm gonna go ahead and bring you on. If you can just state your name and your address for the commission when before addressing them. Thank you. And on deck is Ms. Hillary Ward. Hillary Ward, you'll be next. Stop that.
Go ahead, Mr. Beasley.
I'm Charlie Beasley. My address is 1134 Cardrough Street in Burlington. I live all the way in the back of McIntosh. So I'm going to echo what I've said at the previous council meeting and at the neighborhood information meeting that the applicant held for the notified residents in the area last week. It's not so much traffic for me. I've seen some of the reports on traffic studies done recently for some of the other construction along Bonner Bridge. I don't think right now and even really in the immediate future, traffic is going to be the issue, but it will be coincidental with the construction of this particular type of usage, particularly a gas station or a convenience store, some combination of the two, or anything that brings in any type of high traffic. In 2 years' time, we're going to have an extra, 800 residents potentially, if not more. We're looking at peaking out just behind the University Light in the McIntosh area, all along Bonner Bridge and Lockridge at over 5,000 residents, probably closer to 6,000 once the Guilford side gets developed in the Cove area. Funneling well over half of that traffic through a single light, I don't think will be feasible in the next 2 years. The other half of this is that I want to see this area developed, but not like this, not as a gas station, not as something that's going to bring in major traffic right now until there is a third entrance and egress point from McIntosh that the city has a concrete plan for. I bought here 3 years ago, so I kind of knew what I was signing up for. And, you have to keep developing or an area stagnates, and losing the southwest side of town is not an option for Burlington, in my opinion. So moving here, knowing that this place was going to change was kind of on the table for me. But a lot of the other residents who've been here for 5, 10, 15 years, that's not what they bought into. So I totally understand what they're saying as well. But just voicing my opposition on this, I honestly think there should be a very strong consideration to holding any and all changes, just stopping them right now until a third point of entrance can be made for specifically McIntosh, but really any of the residents, because we're looking at having well over 1,000 residents in just apartments. You guys are looking at potentially having somewhere between 9 and 12% of all of Burlington's population on one road. And then you're asking us to pull in non-local traffic as well as other major safety concerns within a few hundred yards of an elementary school, and arguably one of the top 10 child trafficking states in the nation. I'm not on board with that. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beasley.
Okay, Mr. Beasley, I'm going to go ahead and move you back to an attendee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. And I will be bringing on Hillary Ward. If you can state your name and address before addressing the commission. And as she joins us, Brandy Whitaker, you will be called on next.
Go ahead, Ms. Ward.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Great. I just wanted to make a few points today. I live at 192 Nevis Way in McIntosh. I've been a resident of McIntosh for at least 15 years and have moved to different sections in the subdivision. So I have the perspective of being a longer term resident, as well as building in new construction and being more aware of kind of what's going on in the city. I will also say I have an almost 20-year experience in public service and have conducted public meetings and public hearings, and I do also have a science background. The points that I wanted to raise to you today are a few of my concerns. One is the emissions. We haven't addressed that today. I've heard concerns about soil and water, but the emissions of having a standing gas station with idling cars and trucks in close proximity to a school, which could raise health concerns among the youngest population that will be there, are of concern to me as a parent who has a child at Highland Elementary School. And I don't think that's really been publicized today. or that we've brought in studies from other parts of the state that have made decisions to not allow these gas stations to go near elementary schools for those exact reasons. Wake County, to be particular, when this issue came up months ago, I submitted that in my written comments. Traffic has already been stated as a concern. I also have those concerns. And putting a gas station at the front of McIntosh, what would you do if you wanted to make money? Advertise that on I-40. It doesn't make sense not to do that. And I think we can all infer that that's something that will happen, which will drive a lot of highway traffic into an area that we have significant construction going on now. You already mentioned in the maps that were presented previously, the new construction that's going up for the townhomes. And while that was still presented as something that was just under consideration, that land is currently being cleared. Also land being cleared for the senior center. And then we also still have new construction in McIntosh, as was previously mentioned. So when you combine that with the highway traffic, that causes a significant concern to me. I also raised in the written comments that were provided in the chat that I have a concern that it appeared that we were deferring to the applicant and his view of how these comments should be viewed by the board. And I wanted to raise that as a concern. And the last thing that I wanted to mention is we keep talking about there's going to be a potential exit that will be under construction for McIntosh to deal with the traffic flow. But I also would like to know that's mentioned money as earmarked. It wasn't presented to me as if it's something that's concrete. And also the time that will be taken to actually construct that separate exit. And since there's private property that runs through Greason, what's the plan to take land by eminent domain? So I wanted to raise those concerns for consideration from the board, and I'll be happy to provide additional written comments if those are required. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Ward.
Thank you, Hillary. I'm going to move you back to an attendee. And I will be bringing on Ms. Brandy Whitaker. If you can state your full name and address before addressing the commission. And following her, there is Jessica N. I'm going to promote Ms. Whitaker here.
Ms. Whitaker, are you ready?
Yes, sorry.
Go ahead.
Took just a second. So my name is Brandy Whitaker. I'm a resident of McIntosh, 3248 Castle Rock Drive. I actually am a brand new resident. We just moved in January. I have been a long time kind of outer resident, if that makes sense. My parents live here and have for quite a bit. And while everybody's had some great points about a multitude of things, I do want to bring up a couple of issues that we talked about at the meeting the other night where the residents by chance were able to attend. The apartment complex directly across from the parcel that we're specifically talking about. In the mornings, especially during school traffic, and I'll speak to just that piece, there are residents who do not use the crosswalks. So there are, at any given time, adults and children within the turn lane as they're kind of playing Frogger in the road. Very dangerous situation. The crosswalks as they are located now are not in, not in appropriate places. But I do want to point out that that's going to be a continued issue from the apartments should a gas station be approved. We are going to see a higher population of apartment crossings, basically, as people are crossing this main 3-lane road just to get over to the gas station for convenience. So we may see an increase in pedestrian issues and specifically pedestrian car involved issues. So I want the council I want you guys to take that into consideration from a public safety point. As I mentioned in the chat, and some of you guys saw that, there are tons of new developments that are going up right now. I mentioned 5 of those in the chat, and then also subsequently broke down the approximate number of cars to equate into the traffic. So within the next 3 years, we're looking at 1,225 new cars on the road from these 5 different divisions. That does not take into account gas station traffic. So another 1,200 cars on an already very congested road. My concern was the developers specifically said they were going to refuse a traffic study until after the rezoning, which is not appropriate. We need to know what that impact on the community and specifically on our schools and our fire departments are going to have. They also did not dismiss the diesel option. And their response in the room was basically like, we have the room to put it in. We might do it. The last point I want to make is the entrance and exit will be a singular entrance and exit from that gas station onto Bonner Bridge. It'll be approximately 300 feet from Danbrook. So that basically gives you 4 car lengths to stop between the gas station exit and Danbrook. So anyone making a left off of Danbrook won't be able to make a left because there's going to be constant flow going onto the main, onto Bonner Bridge going back towards University. The last thing, obviously, the environmental impact and the consideration of not necessarily tank spills, but truck spills on the environment. Thank you,
Ms.
guys.
Whitaker. Time is up. Thank you for your comments.
Okay. Yes, Chair Parker, there are 2 additional folks I'll call on. Thank you, Brandy. I'm going to go ahead and move you back to an attendee.
Mr. Kirkpatrick,
Mr. Parker, I'm ready to make a motion if we're ready to accept it.
Mr. Chairman, I'm willing to hear his motion.
are all the other members ready for a vote on this issue? I think we've heard and read the emails and heard from the residents, their main concerns. They obviously are concerned about traffic and the things that we are. So can we get a motion from Mr. Kirkpatrick? Is that agreeable?
Yes. I make a motion to recommend denial of request to rezone the property zone general business to be rezoned Hyde. I'm on the wrong one.
Which option are you choosing?
Hold on. Got to give me a second. I apologize.
Mr. Kirkpatrick, would you like me to share my screen? I can put it up there.
No, I've got it. I've got
Okay.
it. I've got it. I make a motion to recommend denial of the request to rezone the property zone medium density residential to be light industrial limited use. The property is located south side intersection of Danbrook Road and Bonner Bridge Parkway. Address 0 Danbrook Road and consists of Alamance County tax identification number 106952. While the request is consistent with the future land use map, section 4 land use of the comprehensive plan, in that it calls for the area to have business park / light industrial uses. The requested zoning is not necessary for this location. The action is reasonable and in public interest in that the requested rezoning is incompatible with existing land uses in the area, and the current zoning is preferable for the area.
And that was option number 3 to deny.
That was number 4.
Oh,
I believe that number 3. I'm sorry. Did I hear you correctly, sir?
Number 4, I'm sorry.
Number 4. Okay. Thank you.
Consistent with the LUP. Deny, but it's consistent with the LUP.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Yep.
okay. I'm sorry. I was on the wrong one. That's why
so was
I
I.
asked one. Okay, number 4 to deny.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I second the motion.
motion's been seconded. Option number 4 to deny.
Chair
Mr.
Parker, point of order. We've had long precedence of this board of allowing the applicant to respond to public comments if they so choose. I don't know if that's appropriate at this point now that a motion has been made.
Mr. Wall?
Well, I mean, I think some of the comments are opinions, and that it's difficult to argue with someone's opinion about what they think is going to happen and what they're worried about happening. I think the city has addressed access and traffic issues. It must be to the council's satisfaction and to the staff's satisfaction, and that the staff has approved this. It's consistent with the plan. We haven't done the study. We haven't had the resources to do a study at this point. So I think as far as environment, I mean, I could go down the list and make some comments, but I don't think EPA or the city would allow environmental issues to become problematic for this site under the circumstances. Current technology for underground tanks and gas stations is very cutting edge, and it prevents spills. Now, of course, you can't control what might happen if a spill is above. But I'm not the technical expert on these matters. So I don't know that I can tell you what it would or wouldn't do as far as traffic and safety and those kinds of things, except that I think these issues would be resolved at the time of the site plan. And I think that they would be resolved or addressed in a way that would try to make the use of this site as not only consistent with safety and good traffic flow as possible. So about all I
Jamie, from the staff point of view, what is your recommendation?
Staff is recommending approval of this request as it is consistent with the future land use designation.
Okay. Of course, everyone knows we're just an advisory committee and city council has the last word. So Mr. Wall has another shot at this. But we do have a motion on the floor to deny the request. And we have a second. Are there any other comments from staff or commissioners? All right, I'll call for a vote. Mr. Ometo, would you call for a vote?
Sure. Chair Parker,
I agree to deny.
Vice Chair Black,
I vote to deny.
Commissioner Kirk,
Approve.
Commissioner Kirkpatrick.
A deny.
So just as a matter of order, it's an approval to deny. So
Approval to
denying-
deny.
All right.
Approval to deny.
It can get confusing. Thank you, sir. Commissioner Roan,
I approve the motion to deny. It's too close to a school.
Commissioner Zach Nelson,
I approve the motion to deny.
and Commissioner Raynor.
Approve the motion to deny.
Great. Chair Parker, the motion passes unanimously to deny the request, recommend denial of the request.
You said unanimous. I thought, what, did everybody vote to deny?
That is what my records show. My
Okay.
votes show that everyone approved the motion to deny the request, to make a recommendation to deny the request.
Okay, so
What
it's
threw me
unanimous.
off? What threw me off was the way Ryan answered the question.
I figured.
Okay, so we voted unanimously to deny. So on to city council, Mr. Wall. Thank you for coming, making your case. I think we got a good representation from the public and you can go to city council with more ammunition.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, sir.
Good night.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Mr. Wall.
I'll be moving Mr. Wall to an attendee. And I will be bringing on our consultants for the next presentation.
So our next presentation is for the local historic overlay, LHO district design standards. On behalf of the city of Burlington, Mr. Philip Walker and Mr. Keith Covington to present the local historic overlay district design standards, and Ms. Lawson, planning director, to present the process assessment recommendations. That's a whole lot. Now, on this issue, are there any conflicts of interest about the historic district? Okay, let's have a presentation by Mr. Walker. Is he going to make the presentation?
I'm trying to.
I think I'll just do some introduction
go ahead, Jamie.
and background. So while we're getting the consultants admitted as panelists. So good evening, Chair and members of the commission. This is an item to update the local historic district. It is the standard associated with the two local historic districts, the West Davis Historic District and Glencoe. Burlington is one of the 51 certified local governments in the state of North Carolina. And as such, we submitted a grant application to update the local historic districts. in April of 2021, we made an application for the grant to the State Historic Preservation Commission office, and we were awarded the grant. And then we selected Mr. Phil Walker and Mr. Keith Covington, the Walker Collaborative, to undergo the project. As part of the process, you'll see in the presentation and the PowerPoint that I have, we had an advisory committee with about 15 members. It also included members from this commission. The committee met and discussed details of the proposed drafts. We also had several public meetings that were held throughout the process. We received citizen input from both the public meetings and the advisory committee. And then and we had several meetings with the Historic Preservation Commission as well as part of special meetings and regular meetings. At the June 8th Historic Preservation Commission meeting, the draft was presented, and there was a recommendation to approve the current design standards document, as well as the process assessment that was included to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So this is a legislative matter because it does involve an overlay to the zoning districts. And so in your capacity, you would be making a recommendation ultimately with the standards going to the City Council for their review and consideration. So we've got a very short presentation that just gives a little bit more background in terms of the project and where we are today. I will be happy to turn it over to Phil Walker. I think he's on.
I'm on. Can you all
Okay.
hear me okay?
Yeah, great.
Great.
Staff is recommending approval of this item to move forward to the City Council per option 1 in your staff report and binder there. So I'll turn it over to Phil to kind of go through our presentation at this point.
And Phil, I'm
Okay,
driving
thanks.
sorry, Phil, I'm driving the presentation, so just tell me a slide and I'll click on through. Sorry to
Oh,
interrupt.
okay. Yeah, if you want to go to the next slide.
Okay.
All right, so here's kind of all the folks involved. Of course, Jamie already introduced me. We've also got Keith Covington, who's on my consultant team. And Keith, are you, I can only see like 5 or 6. I guess if I scroll down, I'll see that you're there, I hope. Oh, there you are, you're waving. Okay, so Keith is also involved with this, and he can, to the extent that there are questions that come up, he can hopefully help me field some of those. You can see the list of, the key staff. Obviously, Conrad and Jamie are very involved. The state, this is also a state project, and I guess most of the funding or a lot of the funding for the projects from the state. So they're going to carefully review it. They've given us a little bit of feedback so far, but we're looking to see what else they might have. And then on the right there, you can see the list of advisory committee members. And, I think it's a pretty good mix of folks and different perspectives. So Conrad, if you want to go to the next slide, it'd be great. And so what we're going to talk about, I'm going to try to make this, after what you just endured with the previous application, we'll try to make this pretty easy on you. And I'll err on the side of being concise, knowing that we can spend as much time as you need for us to answer your questions and so forth. But, I'll give you a little bit of project background in case you don't know much about the project. We'll then talk about just kind of the most recent editing that we've been doing. And then we'll go through the draft standards and really, we can have a discussion as we go through the standards. And when we go through them, I mean, they're literally, I don't know how many pages now. I think we're close to 200 pages or something. So we're not going to go through page by page, but at least you'll get a sense of what all it entails. And I'm sure you'll have lots of questions, and you can actually, I think, just chime in as we go through it and ask us questions or make comments. So if you want to go to the next one, Conrad. So, what are design standards? They're basically a set of rules for, how you treat the historic area, landscapes, buildings that are local districts. Anytime there's like new development, alterations of existing buildings, a relocation of a building, even though that's fairly rare, and then demolitions are all regulated. You know, there's state enabling legislation, as you can see by these different numbers, the different state codes that allow for this. The city's local legislation is through the Unified Development Ordinance. The standards do have to be approved by city council. Right now, of course, as you probably know, there are 2 local historic overlay districts. There's Glencoe Mill Village, and then the West Davis Fountain Place district, as well as 5 individual local landmarks. And the whole program, the design review program, is overseen by your Preservation Commission and city staff. And certificates of appropriateness, you know, that's basically your permit to do what you want to do relative to a historic district. And if it's deemed a minor work, then it can be approved administratively by staff. Otherwise, if it's major work, it goes before the full commission. And if you want to go to the next one. And the intent of the program, and this is right, and I won't read this word for word, but this is right out of the city's Unified Development Ordinance, and this kind of bullet point list of the reason for having the historic overlay program, you know, for, you know, sound and orderly preservation and conservation of properties to protect, safeguard, and conserve the heritage of the city, and all the benefits that come with that economically and socially, culturally, provide for the education, pleasure, and enrichment of residents and citizens, to foster civic beauty, to stabilize and enhance property values, and then finally contribute to the improvement of the general health and welfare of the city. If you want to go to the next one. So, you know, in doing this project, there are 3 primary goals. I mean, obviously you want a new set of standards. These are the ones that currently exist, and they've been updated over the years. But one of the goals, and a lot of these really came from city council, kind of the marching orders for the project. One is to modernize standards. And just one example would be materials. You know, since the original standards were prepared, there have been a lot of new building materials that have surfaced, and, you know, those need to be addressed. Streamlining the process. And I just mentioned about the major versus minor work, and maintenance is something that you don't need any sort of approval on. And the whole idea is to try to see if there aren't some things that currently are major. In other words, you have to go before the Preservation Commission, and maybe they can be shifted over to what's considered a minor that could be approved administratively. Likewise, there may be some minors at present that could be considered just maintenance work. So that's kind of another objective here. And then finally, just to create a set of really user-friendly standards. I mean, for example, not only having a table of contents, which the current standards actually lack, but even having things like hyperlinks. You know, if you're looking at this digitally as a PDF, you can go through the table of contents, you can click on to whatever it is, and it'll take you right to that section. So, and we have a lot of hyperlinks throughout that'll take you to preservation bulletins that go into more detail on specific issues. So those are kind of the 3 overall goals of the project. And Conrad, if you want to go to the next. So here's where we are in this. You know, there are basically 4 overall steps. We've gone through the planning and content part that we did back in the early spring. Number 2, the stakeholder engagement in March and April, and really engagement occurs throughout the life of this project, but we particularly did a lot of stuff with meetings, some in person when we were there, and Zoom meetings. So that part has occurred. Then we developed the standards in April and May. And now we're in that final stretch where we're doing the review and approval. And you can see we've already gone through 4.1, 4.2, 4.3. Here we are, obviously at 4.4 with the Planning and Zoning Commission. You know, once we do this in July, I think July 19th is correct, is a city council workshop. And then in August, I want to say 16th. Does that sound right? I see Jamie nodding her head. That's a good sign. We'll have our our city council hearing. So if you want to go to the next one. And so when it comes to, and I realize this may not be real meaningful to you if you haven't followed this project all along, but just to kind of hit on some of the things that we've been wrestling with most recently. First of all, and Jamie's going to kind of hit on, I think, the next couple of slides talking about the approval process. But, it's not just the substance of the standards, but also, what can we do to improve the process? So the standards make a clear distinction between what's considered quasi judicial, meaning design review, issuing of COAs, that sort of thing, versus the advisory roles, such as, historic district expansions or things like that. The design review committee is something that hasn't been used in quite a while, but we're proposing to reactivate it. And that would be up to 5 members. They're not members of the commission, the Preservation Commission, although some of them might be former members. And they're there as this kind of third party that works with applicants to provide input into design. And we think it could be really helpful for the commission, as well as for staff and applicants. And then finally, we put together a matrix that looks at minor versus major work versus maintenance, things that don't require a COA. And there was already in the existing standards, there's kind of a bullet point list, but we've taken that and really expanded it quite a bit, including a lot of different scenarios of types of work that aren't really addressed now, to try to figure out, okay, is it a minor or is it a major? Just to kind of add some clarity to things. When it comes to the actual design standards, we've also put together a materials matrix where we indicate whether a particular material is prohibited, or is it permitted, or is it maybe, which means it depends on the circumstances. It might be, for example, is the material going to be on an existing historic building, or is it going to be on a new infill building? Is it visible from a street or not visible from a street? Those sorts of things. We've also got 3 appendix sections, one on plant materials, another on building permit requirements, since a lot of people don't realize, oh, I still need to get a building permit, or maybe they don't, but at least it adds clarity to that issue. And then having links to various applications and other documents is appendix 3. And the State Preservation Office, and I mentioned that earlier, of course, they're reviewing this document as well. So if you want to go to the next slide. All right. And Jamie, did you want to hit on these?
I'll just go through them. I don't need to highlight every single point because I think
Okay.
some of them you've already covered, but the staff also took a look at our existing Historic Preservation Commission process and really had a separate document that kind of provided some additional recommendations and included that as part of your packet. So, continued training opportunities, considering expanding the board to allow for additional members with particular expertise and background. Phil talked about the activation of the design review committee or design consultation committee, really beefing up our website and making that a hub for input and information. You can go to the next slide. A recommendation that the historic district standards be reviewed annually. So knowing that this document is similar to our unified development, is not set in stone, and that, based upon different things that come up or the use of the standards itself, there may be things that need to be tweaked or further clarified. So those recommendations would come to you again in an advisory role and to City Council in forms of a text amendment. HBC has set special meetings and can continue to do that to help to assist applicants when there's expediting needed. We also have a recommendation to add a specific position to help administer the historic preservation goals and the standards, a specific staff person to do that. And as Phil mentioned, there have been a number of shifts where items have gone from major COA that would require the Historic Preservation Commission approval to a minor, which would be through an administrative approval through staff, and then shifts from minor COAs to general maintenance. in an effort to be more flexible and help the applicants to undertake work on their properties. We'll go through the standards briefly. There's a lot of diagrams and descriptions, and the standards themselves are just a significant upgrade to the current rules and requirements that we have now to better provide clarity on projects and types of work. I think that kind of covers, what I wanted to summarize just in terms of, what staff also wanted to recommend as part of the process. We did also include an expedited discussion of emergency situations, where I believe there also are standards currently that exist that deal with utility services and emergency tree removal, but to broaden that interpretation so that there is an emergency health and safety issue, that those items could be reviewed in a broader interpretation.
Ms. Lawson, this is Chair Parker. Do you think that y'all can finish this out by 9 o'clock?
We certainly can.
Okay, good. Keep going. Push on.
I think it's a great idea.
Push on.
And what we'll do what I really want to do is just run through the table of contents, and then, we can flip through some pages, but it may be more a matter of, do you want to go to something in particular? So if you look at this table of contents, we start off, introductions. We kind of talk about the benefits of historic zoning. We talk about the state legislature for it, or legislation, the intent. Then in section B, the process, we get into all that stuff I mentioned about the minor versus major matrix. Talk about the process for getting a COA. Then in section C, the historic context, that talks about, Burlington's historic development, the two different districts and landmarks, the 5 landmarks. We have diagrams that kind of label the parts of buildings, so everybody's kind of speaking the same language. And then we actually go into the different architectural styles and building types that are encountered in either the two districts, or even potential future districts for that matter. And then, I'm sorry, if you can go back, I think, yeah. The standard section D is where you really get into the meat of it, right? And we have some general principles that are based on the federal standards. Then we talk about visibility and contextual compatibility, contributing versus non-contributing buildings. We talk about material deterioration and replacement. So then we have 4 major sections, okay? Historic buildings, maintenance and alterations. And you can see, if you go to the second column, we kind of take the different components of a building and we talk about those, have standards. The second one, historic buildings, we get into additions and just kind of basically about additions is that section. Number 3 is new buildings. And we have some general standards for new buildings that apply to any type of building, but then we also break it down specifically by residential, commercial, and mixed use, industrial, and institutional. Then number 4, outbuildings and different site design issues. And then if you want to go to that next page or next slide, building relocations, demolitions, and demolition by neglect. I don't know if you're familiar with the term demolition by neglect, but that's essentially letting a building get into such a state of, of deterioration that it's effectively being demolished. So you've got provisions in your UDO that prevent that. So we get into that issue. Number 6, and I think Jamie might have mentioned this, disaster preparedness. And then signage, which is a fairly big section, because the minute you start to regulate signs, there's all sorts of different types of signs and a lot of things that go with it. Then finally, murals. And then I mentioned before about these different appendix sections. So that's an overview. And I don't know, Conrad, if it makes sense to just kind of skim through to give them a sense of what the document looks like, or, what do you think?
Yeah, I can do that. Just give me a second to.
And while you're doing that, while you're going between, 2 things I should mention, because they're not reflected in the current document, in case you've even looked at it. And these were recommendations that we just got, and we're in agreement with those. One of them is that we need to make a change when it comes to fences to make it clear that in the Glencoe district, fences are not permitted in the front yard. And by the way, there's a set of what are the CC&Rs conditions. what is it, guys?
The covenants and restrictions.
Exactly. In those, those are much more restrictive than what we're doing here. And people already have to live with those. But anyway, that's one of the requirements. You can't have fences in the front yards. They're discouraged even in the other district, West Davis, Fountain Place. And then the other change that we're proposing that this is a new thing, goes back to Glencoe. And to the extent that you have buildings that are on piers, you would be able to screen the gaps between the piers with lattice work, which is a pretty traditional, historically based treatment. So anyway, those are two things that aren't in the current document, but I just wanted to get those out there. Yeah, and here's the matrix, of course, for major, minor, COA. And if you look at this, you'll see where it says SR1, there's a little note at the bottom where it says staff recommends that this particular standard be considered general maintenance. Right now, if you look, it's shown as minor work, which would require an administrative approval. So that just kind of gives you a sense of all the different, and you may want to go through the other ones too, so they can see all the different, you can see these categories. So the first set were on structures, then other building features and issues. And then that's continued. Then you get into landscaping, then you get into other site features. And again, there's a bunch of notes where, for the most part, we're looking for opportunities to try to shift things maybe from minor to no COA is kind of the trend here. And I know that's scary, but that's the process.
That's my favorite chart of the whole thing. I love that.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out how to get around all that, but it's very interesting, I think, how y'all done that.
And the city staff put that together. So my compliments to them.
Yeah, they did a great job. I like that.
They did. Yeah. And if you want to go through some of the other ones, or just kind of skim through, here's the historic stuff. Yeah, that's a good pace just to kind of, you can get a sense of what, each district, we show the map and give the history, and there's the diagrams, the different building parts. Then we get into all these different, starting off with the commercial. These are the different styles that you find. And again, these are sometimes areas that aren't historic districts, but they're found in your community, like the downtown area. Then you get into the residential here, all these different styles, many of which you find in your districts. Yeah.
Philip, I found this very interesting with the A, B's, and C's to explain the different aspects of the property and how it's put together, and this is very interesting, and I think this is a great manual for our city to use. I don't think you're going to get much pushback from this committee on what you've done here, because it's a great deal of work, and it's very, very visual and usable, and I think this is going to help the historic committee a great deal. They're going to really love this. I'm sure you've they're in on this, but it's just a great manual, and it helps out a lot to let you know what to do and what not to do. So,
yeah, well, I appreciate those comments very much. And yeah, the staff's done a great job too, kind of orchestrating things and giving us input. And there's been a lot of input from different groups, property owners and the advisory committee, obviously the Preservation Commission. So yeah, we hope it will be helpful.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Black.
I was going to ask Mr. Kirk, who served on this committee, if he felt very comfortable with this, and did he think, in his opinion, this would reach out to the concerns that had been brought to our commission in the past?
Yes, and yes. I was very impressed with this process. I thought Phil and Keith orchestrated this very well, worked on a very tight timeline to create this happen. Jamie Lawson deserves a lot of credit as well for helping facilitate. It was clear that many people had effective input. including the two members that are residents that are proposing to leave. Both of them were members and were quite active throughout this entire process. The major concerns, as I understood them, about unclear of how the process works. This is so much clearer. That was addressed. Requiring these certificates of appropriateness for minor issues. They work very hard to reduce some of that bureaucracy so simple things can move through the process quickly. People that are opposed to bureaucracy in general might not still like it, but I thought it was a fantastic product that came out.
Thank you for your time on this also.
You're welcome. I just enjoyed it. It's good public participation, urban design by many stretches. Definitely.
Are there any other commissioners that would like to make a comment to Philip before we open this up to see if there's any public participation?
I do have one follow-up. Watching this closely throughout. It's about the process. So we have these separate documents, the process assessment, which was the internal document about how to review how things are approved. So not just the design standards, but the process there. It seemed that there was a sense with the Historic Preservation Commission to get this out there and let it be a living document. We now have these, we got the email letter from Elizabeth Reed about the fences and brick posts. There's already one comment in our chat from Christy Benson addressing this. I guess the document says to review this annually. I'd like to recommend to staff that at least the first time, a lot of people are going to probably provide feedback quickly, that we don't wait a whole year to address some of these things that come out in the near future. So if that's possible to make this a little more living this to start than waiting a full year. That's my only thought.
Okay, so whenever we make the motion, we need to recommend the inclusion of that assessment recommendations. Is that right? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'd like to recommend. A ton of great work, but this all happened quite quickly. And we just want to make sure it meets the needs and then we find all the gaps.
Okay. All right, let's ask a few more commissioners if they have anything. Ethan, Joan, got any comments?
I have a quick question. The design review committee, I was wondering, it says optional on that flow chart. Is that something that is an advisory committee that's optional if you need advice, or is that something that everybody or major repairs must go through?
Right, that is an optional thing. It's just kind of a service to help people, navigate the whole process and especially to kind of do a deep dive on some of these design issues. Hopefully we'll have designers that are part of that and maybe some former Preservation Commission members, but it's not mandatory.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, go ahead, Mr. Ryan.
Will my neighbor, Mr. Gant, be pleased with the results of this? Will he be able to use the composite door that he wants to use?
Yeah, and I'm not sure who that would be directed to, but as far as as far as the door he's proposing, I mean, we'd have to see the application to see exactly what's being proposed. So, I mean, there's certainly room for composites, but again, it depends on the application.
So until you get a COA, you can't really say.
Well, until you get an application for a COA, right? That shows where it's located, what's the design, all that stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
But can I say something?
Go
if
ahead,
everyone
Keith.
can hear me okay?
Yeah.
With the materials matrix, though, there are quite a few modern materials included in that. So I think that's a definite progression for the historic district. So there's certainly more options than there were originally.
I guess to reframe my question, I know Alan wanted to use I think a 3D printed door that looked from the outside exactly like the existing door, but it would be made of modern materials.
So Hey, Conrad, since you're on there, can you go to openings? Doors and windows, sorry.
He was there.
What, back up one, yeah, okay.
I'm sorry. Right here, this page or the prior?
Yeah, the prior one.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll zoom in.
So composite is listed currently in the matrix as a maybe,
Mhm.
which means that the Historic Preservation Commission could approve that. And if the applicant showed that it was, you know, a replica of what was there, but using modern materials, I could see that being approved.
And also just to add to that, one thing we've got when you get into the whole section, you know, there, in addition to this matrix, there's, you know, several pages that just talk about materials and get into a lot of issues. And one of the things we've included is a list of questions or kind of like criteria, because, you know, we know that there are going to be new materials that'll come out, you know, next 5 or 10 years, there'll be things that we can't even predict right now. And we wanted to not limit ourselves. And of course, if the document's updated periodically, you know, things can be added. But in the meantime, still, if there are questions, there's a list of questions for the commission to ask themselves about some proposed material. I mean, things like, does it hold up well over time? You know, will its appearance hold up over time? I mean, that's a big one for synthetic materials, just as one example.
Thank you. Thank you, Philip. Conrad, have you made contact with anybody out in the public that would like to speak to this matter?
See, I know Jamie sent out a chat there. So for folks that would like to address the commission, please do so by using the raise hand feature. Or and if you're joining us by phone, please use *9. So I'm seeing some hands populate here. I'll go ahead in the order that they've popped up here. We've got this looks like Tom and Lynn Cohen. I'm going to go ahead and promote you to panelists. And before addressing the commission, if you can please state your full name and address. And then following them will be, I see, it looks like Alan Gant.
And there's 3 minutes for each speaker.
And I will go ahead and get that up here.
Get your clock started, and let's get our first speaker up.
Okay. Looks like they're joining us. I'll go ahead and start when ready.
Tom and Lynn, go ahead. Unmute yourselves and
yep. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we hear you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Parker. Thank y'all for letting me speak. I'll try to be brief, so I know you folks want to go home. I served on I'm Tom Cowan and Lynn. I live at 2451 Glencoe Street in the Glencoe Historic District. I also resided we owned a property and restored a property at 619 West Front Street in the West Front Street Historic District for 25 years. I served on the advisory committee, and I do want to commend the consultants and the staff from the city for the great job they did on the guidelines. It's a big improvement. During the process of input, I shared some, there've been some concerns, and they're specific to some where where the city wants to, the staff is thinking about making there's some of the guidelines where they're minor versus major and what's allowed and not allowed a little easier on the residents. And I'll just be specific quickly. The section 826, which is doors and windows, original doors and windows not visible from the street. And the idea is to make that from major to minor, basically allowing you to change them when they're not visible from the street. And this and the other one or two that I'm going to speak about are generally inconsistent with typical standards for historic districts nationwide. The other two are A39, which are changing architectural details, original architectural details. And what's going to be allowed is you can change them if they're not visible from the street. Same with doors and windows. And generally what you want to do is try to preserve that stuff. And then the final one is you could remove a tree as long as you replace the new one. That's the new proposed standard. What typically is done is you set a size limit, like if the tree is over, it was 4 inches in the Glencoe district, it's 15. And if you want to try to preserve those, a lot of cities have tree preservation standards. And so we're generally against some of these things, loosening them up. I'm on the president of the Glencoe Homeowners Association. I've served a term before. I know every one of the owners in Glencoe, about 40. I do preservation contracting. I've worked on 15 houses in Glencoe, as many as additional in the West Front Street Historic District. And I can tell you, the people that buy these houses know that these are the conditions and they're happy with them. And I could give you a list of dozens of 60 people who agree with these guys, the kind of guidelines where you preserve, you may not be able to see the door or window that's original from the street, but you can see it from your neighbor's backyard or side yard. So those things are important to us. Thank you. I see my time's up. Thank you all for your patience.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Cohen. I'm going to move you back to a panelist, and I will be bringing on Mr. Alan Gant. And Mr. Alan Gant, if you before you addressing the commission, if you can please state your full name and address. And following Mr. Gant I've got Mr. Ian Baltutis.
Go ahead, Mr. Gant.
Let me see if he's joined us here.
Can you hear us, Mr. Gant? You're on.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. So my name is Alan Gant Jr. I live at 1022 West Davis Street in Burlington, North Carolina. Thank you much for the opportunity. Thanks to all the staff members for the lead you to think that the devil is in the details.
You're frozen, Mr. Gant.
Might want to turn his video off to see if that improves.
Yeah, okay. Okay, go ahead. Mr. Gant, we can stop the video there. I wonder if that worked. Stop this timer.
I'll put in the, I don't know if you can hear me. I'll put in the meeting, you can restart the timer.
Sure.
And I'll put in the meeting chat, and I'll also email Mr. Gant if he wants to call in separately.
Excuse me. Let's see if
Can
looks like
you-
his videos. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Try again, Mr. Gant.
My name is Alan Gant. I live committee. I think
I think you might have to call in. His audio is a little bit difficult to hear.
Can you hear me?
I'm attempting to give him the phone number, so just bear with us for 1 second, okay?
Okay. Maybe while we do that, Mr. Gant gets calls on. Are we okay? Maybe we can move on with Mr. Ian Baltutis.
Yes, go ahead. Let's hear Mr.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna promote him to a panelist. Let's see here. Looks like he's joining us. Okay, Mr. Baltutis, if you can just state your full name and address for the record. Looks like you're on mute there. No audio.
There you go. Test, test.
Yes, you're good. Thank you.
Too many microphones. My name is Ian Baltutis. I live at 702 West Davis Street in the Burlington West Davis Street Historic District. And I appreciate the team's work on this and our community's work, attending these meetings and providing feedback and reviewing all the different drafts of the document. I'm really happy with the document as it stands. I think appreciate Tom's comments, and there's still a few things to be addressed. But I appreciate the way it mirrors some of the other city documents with diagrams and photos, charts and materials and other things that make it very digestible for all different types of users. So thank you to the team for putting all that together, as well as for putting in the historic context of it, tying that to the local community, architectural styles, and why it's all important. I think that's really helpful in that it reads very easily to help guide people's thought process. And having done restoration before on a number of different houses, I think it communicates the reason why we do this, the reason why this is important, and then how those decisions should be made, and how we should think about it when choosing materials or features that we want to restore or attempt to replace if needed. I appreciate the request for a review cycle. I think a 3 to 6 month review cycle over the first 2 years would be helpful, because we're all going to be deep in the mud of actually applying this, and things are going to come up as we try to actually do those projects on our houses. So having that ability to raise the flag and get those changes put in place on a faster cycle than 10 years is much appreciated. And yeah, overall, thanks to the team, and look forward to having this approved.
Thank you, Ian. Appreciate your comments. Have you got anything worked out with Mr. Gant yet, Jamie? Oh, you're talking?
I'm on the phone with him right now.
Oh, good.
He's
Okay.
trying to call in, but he's having difficulty when he gets to the webinar number. So I'm just working with him on that right now. See if,
Okay.
maybe see if there's anybody else who has comments.
You got anybody else, Conrad?
I'm not seeing any other hands raised at this time, Chair Parker.
Okay. Well,
Since we have a moment here, I don't know if Phil and Keith, did you look in the chat? Or maybe Jamie too, there's a comment from a Christina Benson about sheds and garage storage. I don't know if there's any way to respond to that at this moment.
Oh, okay. Let's see. I'm just reading it right now.
Have to go back to look at the
Throughout this
standards.
lack garage storage. Okay, so I think her concern is that if you've got a prefabricated outbuilding
Shouldn't have a problem with
and any of it's visible from the street,
I'm listening to the meeting.
then it needs to be, follow the standards. I mean,
No,
I think the way it's
on the web.
written, they would have to follow them anyway, if it's visible, because we have very specific standards for outbuildings, including garages. And Keith, don't you agree that, the way
I
they're
do.
written now, they're going to be reviewed and have to follow standards?
I agree. I was gonna pull up the specific standards, but I have not been able to do that just yet.
Okay.
I think I
So I
heard.
think- Yeah, I think we're
Mr.
in good
Gant,
shape on that, to be quite honest, but if there's something specific that maybe she could share with us later, if there's something we're missing, we'll be happy to take a look at that.
Absolutely.
Let's check in with Jamie again. How's your progress?
Yeah, I would try to ask Mr. Gant to unmute himself and see if having him with his video off has resolved his issues. So Mr. Gant, why don't you try to speak, see if that's clearer?
Are we better now?
Yes, that sounds great.
Yes.
Again.
So I'm going to
Uh,
hang up with you.
I'm sorry for the confusion here, and I apologize. My name is Alan Gann. I live at 1022 West Davis Street in Burlington, North Carolina. And thank you very much to Jamie and Conrad and the staff for their hard work and trying to put this mass of information together. I guess my comments would be one of the devil is in the details. From a city standpoint, I think the city is accepting some liabilities that you need to be very careful about. For instance, widening streets, curbs and sidewalk, bridges, bike walks, new sidewalks, street lighting, street names, landscaping, and streetscapes all have to go through if it's part of the historical district. And I don't know anybody else around that can do bridges and sidewalks and widening of streets and bike lanes except the city. So you certainly are limiting yourself. One of the issues that we tried to address was what happens to a property that is neglected and how you take care of it. I personally was involved in a situation like this. And so in this particular case, in a building that has been condemned, still has to go through the historical process. And in some cases, it can be very, very unsafe. And the city needs to have a way so they can very quickly assess a condemned building and be able to move without without having to go through the rigmarole in order to get it approved. Certainly, when it comes to landscaping, I appreciate the consensus that has been drawn, but I also want to call to your attention that I have planting trees on my property that are 15 inches in diameter. There's nothing historic about them. And when it comes to landscaping, I think that we should, quite frankly, make it much, much looser than it currently is. I think that we have not attempted to try to clean up the districts, as in the West Burlington district and still includes commercial, high density and vacant lots that are limited in their use because they're just there and they shouldn't be. I realize that my time is running out, and I would tell you that although I'm very happy that the work has been done and that we've made some dramatic improvements, that I would ask you to not vote in favor of it, because I think we've crossed the threshold into violating property rights of citizens. I'll be happy to send an email to Nolan on this. And I'm amazed, quite frankly, that you're being asked to approve this after 30 minutes on something that's going to affect the city of Burlington by millions and millions and millions of dollars. I hope you've all read the 176 pages in detail. I could go on for the next 3 hours, but my time is up.
Thank you, Mr. Gant. Appreciate your input. Which begs the question, have we had enough time to study this, read it, and understand it? I sped through it this afternoon as hard as I could, but I have not read every page. I've read every headline or every paragraph line. What do you think, Vice Chair, Mr. Black?
Mr. Chairman, I've unlike you, I did have a chance to go through it. And I put my trust into people like Mr. Gant and Mr. Kirk, who was on the committee, and they presented, I think, a real good program, much better than we've had. And I base my thinking that the staff's recommendation is for approval, and I'm comfortable with making a motion for that. That's my opinion.
Any other comments about postponing this? Is there?
I'll add huge amount of heavy lifting by the Historic Preservation Committee or Commission. They've gone through this many times from all that I've witnessed with the guidance of the staff and the consultants. I've been very impressed with their diligence and attention to detail, and that gives me great confidence in voting on this to move it forward.
Okay. James?
For me personally,
You froze up and vanished. All right, Mr. Rayner, anything from you?
Hold on, let me see
Comment.
him real quick.
No, sir, Chair Parker, no comment from me.
Okay. Can you get James back on? Try again, James. Unmute. God, I hate these meetings.
I need more time.
You need more time.
I do. I mean, look, I think a lot of hard work's been done. I just need to digest the information, and it's just, that's my personal opinion.
Mr. Roan?
Well, with the caveat that it's got a review coming up annually. The things that Alan addressed can be addressed with future documents. I'd like a little more time, but we're basically spinning our wheels if we get too deep in this mud. Professionals have done this with more expertise than I've got.
Okay. Everybody piped in on it?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
make a motion to recommend approval of the local historic overlay district design standards. The motion is based upon the consistency with the comprehensive plan in that the land use plan calls for the celebration, encouragement, support, and rehabilitation of historic buildings. Section 2, character and identity goal 1 call celebrate Burlington's unique history and local character. Section 2, character and identity goal 1, recommendation 1 calls to encourage the preservation and continued use of historical buildings, districts, landmarks, and landscape. Section 2, character and identity goal 1, recommendation 2 calls to support the historic rehabilitation efforts of private property owners. This action is reasonable and in the public interest in that the comprehensive plan calls for the historic preservation of the city's historic resources, the local historic overlay district design standards, complete the historic preservation of the city's historic resources.
Is there a second?
Before you make a second and do a roll call, I just want to clarify. So staff is looking for two things. A recommendation to move the item forward to the city council with or without the changes that staff has included, and those were noted in pages B8 through, I think, B11. That's the first item. And then the second item is staff is also looking for the recommendation to include the items in the process assessment document. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make that clarification. Thank you.
I was going to ask Mr. Black if he would include those two things that Jamie has just said in your motion.
Were they not included in our proposal?
Yeah, I just wanted to make it clear.
Okay. Go ahead, Keith.
And it is that, so in the proposal, there's some items in the matrix where staff has recommended one direction and the HPC has recommended as a different direction. And those were noted in the matrix table where it was pointed out as SR staff recommendation.
I'm looking at the consistency statement that was provided me, where it says staff recommends the option in red bold type.
You feel that covers it?
I'm asking if it doesn't cover it, why doesn't it?
I would ask for that consistency statement to be amended to also include the approval of the local historic overlay district standards and the process assessment document.
Why was that not provided to me? Why
The
am I
document,
reading this and now I'm asked to amend it?
that was a typo, sir.
Oh, it was a typo. Okay. In the future, if you could type check everything before you send it to us, before we make motions and seconds, I would appreciate it.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Mr. Keith, go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question, and this may be more for Jamie. Would this also include the two changes recommended by, oh my gosh.
Ms. Reed,
The
Ms.
name.
Reed.
Yes,
Reed,
Ms.
yeah,
Reed, thank you.
RED.
Yeah. Because we reviewed
We-
those, both Bill and I did. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we
And we were-
received those comments today. And while I think staff is in favor of those recommendations and those adjustments, they have not been included in this draft, and this commission has not seen that language. So
Okay.
I think that we can
fine.
make that, we can include that as part of any future amendments that go forward to city council.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Thank
Yep.
you.
All right, so Mr. Black, you hold them steady on your motion.
No, sir, I will remove my motion.
Motion's been removed.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I move we table this until the city has addressed the language and that we approve it at our next meeting.
Second.
all in favor of tabling this motion or this decision, signify by saying aye. Raise your hand. All opposed?
Nay.
Chair Parker, if I may, to do a roll call on that vote, sir.
Go ahead.
So I've got Chair Parker,
I vote in favor.
Vice Chair Black,
In favor.
Commissioner Kirk,
Against.
Commissioner Kirkpatrick,
In favor of tabling the motion, yeah. Tabling the vote.
Commissioner Roan,
In favor?
Commissioner Zach Nelson,
I vote against.
and Commissioner Raynor.
In favor.
Motion passes 5 votes to 2 to table the motion to the next meeting.
Thank you, Conrad. We have one final item to discuss, and we can table that if you're interested, but we wanted to have a discussion about paper, electronic deliveries, pickups on these packets. You want to talk about this another time?
I mean, Chair Parker, if we can, more than happy to talk about this at another time. We can wait until our new planning and zoning commissioners join us after they're appointed by council to the next meeting in July.
Okay. Anything else to come before this board?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Last meeting, we discussed making a recommendation to city council or a suggestion that they ask about Airbnbs. Did anybody follow up with that? To see if city council would want to look into the regulations surrounding them?
Yeah, Vice Chair Black, I can update you that staff has been looking at some additional language about Airbnbs and our upcoming Unified Development Ordinance text amendments. We've also are going to be looking into tiny homes. So at the moment, that's all I'm familiar with.
Okay.
It's going to be staff's going to be approaching that matter.
Thank you. The other thing is that owing to the fact that we discussed that our meetings are public meetings, but not public hearings, I suggest that staff rewrite the letters that go out representing that instead of saying that it's a public hearing, leading people to believe that they have an open range to come and talk. I believe one of the problems we had tonight was that the letters had already went out and it had wording addressing this as a public hearing and not a public meeting. So I'd like to see a draft of a rewrite, please, maybe at the next meeting.
Staff can look into the language again regarding if it's a technicality. My understanding is that our communications to the public is that these are public meetings, but I will definitely look into that matter. I believe that to Jamie's point earlier in our meeting, the properties have been posted. We weren't doing that before. We've also increased our mailing radiuses. So that might be one of the reasons why you're getting some more folks participating in your meetings, but that has been at the direction of the commission. But in terms of the technicality, we can relook at that. So it's what your intent is, that it's more clearly communicated to the citizenry that received the letter.
That's correct. The city council meeting is a public hearing.
Correct.
Whereas and we can ask the public if we have a specific question for that, we can ask for their comments. But this is not a guarantee that there's going to be a public forum open to the public. It's up to the commission whether or not, and I don't think that we've accepted that in the past. I think we've just thought it was a public hearing. And then we got the UDO and it definitely spells out that it is just a public meeting and not a hearing.
I wonder too, Conrad, if you could check with some of our neighbors, Greensboro or some other cities, and see what their P&Z policy is, whether they allow public comments at P&Z. Just like Mr. Black is addressing.
Right.
Definitely can do.
If we need to, we might have to amend the UDO because it's pretty specific.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Black. Are there any other comments to come before this meeting? Then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. We'll see you next.
Thank you, everyone. Gonna close the meeting.